Money, 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 money. Who loves some money? I love some money. You know what? I want more money. I want money that is going to give me a lot of good pay. You know, one of the good models is Seattle, Washington, and I want to see that go to the rest of the country. I want to see that where I am. I want to see that. I want to see that overridden Prop 22. I want to see Prop 22 become unconstitutional and unenforceable. And then all of a sudden they bring in the Seattle and Washington model. And everybody who's watching right now, you're going to see exactly why we're talking about this in just a minute. I mean, obviously it's the title for today, but yeah, we got something going on when it comes to Seattle, when it comes to Washington. We're going to bring a couple of people on in just a few minutes talking about, you know, how they made this happen. There's a 5-step playbook. So if you're interested in getting great rates when it comes to time and distance and still being able to see where you're going, pick up and drop off, you know, it's a great model all around. We're going to have them on in just a couple of minutes. So let's do the rundown real quick. We have special guests, Walt, Joshua, and Peter coming on in just a couple of minutes talking about that. We're going to be talking about the Seattle, Washington State playbook, the model, what's going on there. A lot of information really quick because they're on about for 30 minutes or so. Then we're going to be talking about Minnesota. Gig workers are going back to Governor Walz after defeat. We're going to be talking about the Uber earnings report. Obviously, it came out last week. Lyft's came out earlier today. We're going to talk about Lyft's next week, though. And then we're going to be talking about the gig worker future segment that we are starting to do every week. This one, we're going to be talking about, should you put Uber driving on your resume? So if you're going to go back to a job, should you be putting Uber, Lyft, Doordash, whatever your gig work is on your resume? We're going to be talking about that. And then we're going to be talking about Lyft rides. They got cheaper. What's going on with that? According to some journalists, because of the massive layoffs at Lyft, or is there something else going on? And then Uber is getting an exclusive contract with Domino's Pizza. So should you look into it? We're going to be talking about that. Sergio, anything to say real quick?
No, man, you did all of it. You know, we're going to talk about the 3 important people who are at the negotiating table when it came to talking to Uber and Lyft in Washington State and Seattle. And, you know, what better way than hear from the horse's mouth? And, you know, I am personally committed. I know you are. And I know a lot of our audience is, to getting rid of upfront fares, if not getting rid of, you know, creating some sort of situation that, you know, we have rate cards again, as opposed to just some algorithm in a black box deciding what I'm worth. I'm worth what I
no
think
more,
I'm
no
worth.
more rate rebalancing. No more.
None of that garbage.
You get paid less for long trips. No more. Oh, you got a $40 sticky surge, but because there's some discrepancy between rideshare and food delivery surge amounts, that you're not going to get the full surge. In fact, you're going to get negative. No, none of that stuff.
Yeah, keep it simple, stupid model. So
exactly.
Yeah,
but before we get started, we do want to thank today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is Mimo. So if you're looking to level up your financial game, let me introduce you to Mimo, your ultimate financial companion. Mimo is the mobile app designed for self-employed workers like you. It brings all your income sources together and effortlessly tracks your earnings across all your gigs in one easy app called Mimo. But that's not all. Mimo helps you hit your financial goals by automatically tracking your progress, helping you stay motivated and earn more every step of the way. In fact, Mimo users who set a goal in the app make 12% more than users who don't, which means you can get to your goals faster. And when it comes to taxes, Mimo has you covered. You can get free tax estimates when you earn and when you know what you owe, which is going to save you serious money on expensive accountant fees. And you can even get answers to important tax questions for free instantly with Mimo's built-in AI accountant. Click the link in the description for more information and to download the free app.
Absolutely. Please do it, because a lot of drivers don't pay attention to financial freedom or, you know, financial future for themselves. This is a great app that can guide you, help you, you know, get you your tax budgets correct, get everything else in order, so you know how you're running your business profitably or you're not making any money. So you please, you know, it's very important to us. This segment, we're going to do a segment about, you know, on each show, we're going to do a segment about financial future of gig workers. And Mimo is going to be an integral part of that process. So with that said, let's bring on our guests.
All right. So just a quick background. We got Peter coming on right now. Peter, thank you for coming on. You're a ride-hail driver who completed more than 40,000 trips. Congrats on that. From Uber and Lyft. You're the president of the Drivers Union and Voice of Fairness for ride-hail drivers in Washington State. Peter is also a human rights activist and immigrant from South Sudan. In 2014, he began organizing fellow Uber and Lyft drivers in Seattle after drivers began to see their pay routinely cut and face termination without reason or recourse. By organizing together as a union, Washington state drivers have won the strongest labor protections for Uber and Lyft drivers in the country, including a nation-leading fair pay standard, just cause protections against unfair termination, and benefits including paid sick time, workers' comp, unemployment, and paid family and medical leave. Prior to driving for Uber and Lyft, Peter also worked as a taxi cab driver. Thank you for coming on, Peter.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah, you're welcome, Peter. Yeah, I want to move to Seattle.
Welcome.
I know, right?
You're welcome to Seattle.
I mean, all those are great. We also have Walt coming on. Welcome, Walt. Walt, you're an active member of the Drivers Union, serving on multiple driver leadership committees with the union. And you also started driving as a ride-hail driver in 2015 and now giving over 13,000 trips on Uber and Lyft. We had you on, I believe it was literally this week last year. And you've also been on, a few months ago, kind of giving an update to Seattle's model and Washington, what's going on there. So welcome back. Great to have you.
Good to see you, Walt. He's a veteran.
Great to be here.
Veteran of Show Me the Money. And
yeah, right.
and we, in fact, talked about Walt last week. He was the one that discovered the quarter of a penny slippage, as we call it, or shaving, as we call it. Oops.
I mean,
and he caught it, and he got drivers $200,000. I mean, there you go. You know what I mean? You got to hold.
Take a penny from every ride from every driver. I'll be a millionaire in no time.
Yeah, that's how
I know, right?
Yeah,
well, I mean, how long was that they went back? So $200,000 for 15,000 drivers.
That was about
on a quarter of a penny. Yeah, so there you go.
That was just like the first 3.5 months of the year, basically.
Yeah, there you go.
Awesome. Well, that's great. And then we also have Joshua coming on. Welcome, Joshua. Thank you. Joshua is worked as a union community organizer for over 20 years. Josh's career has focused on building worker power by running successful field campaigns to win groundbreaking labor standards. And this is by far a groundbreaking labor standard when it comes to what's going on in Washington, what's going on in Seattle, how you guys got here, when it comes to the pay rates, when it comes to all these, benefits like workers' comp, paid time off, sick time, medical leave, all of that. So it's great to have you guys on. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate the time. And without further ado, let's get right into it.
Yeah. So, this is, I've been a huge fan of the Seattle, Washington state model for a couple of years. I think gig work has come to a point that legislation is the necessary evil, let's say. Okay. I'm not a huge fan of the government. I don't like government getting involved in my business, but at some point, fairness has to come into play. And I think what the country is experiencing with upfront fares, which you guys don't have up there, has to stop. I mean, this is becoming just silly gamification, gamblification, algorithmic wage discrimination. We don't need any of this. We just don't need it. And we're also worried that it's going to infiltrate in other, businesses, regular W-2s, because that's what these companies want to do. Now, but before we get to where we got to today or how we got to today, I want to hear from each of you how it all started, right? Did it start at the city level? Did it immediately go statewide? What your individual roles were, from the first meeting that maybe two drivers met, maybe Peter met with another driver, said, I have this idea in my head. We should form a drivers union in Washington state. I just want to hear all of it. I want to hear how it started and then how it accelerated, what was done for it to become a grassroots kind of a campaign. And then legislatures got involved, obviously with the help of Teamsters, a union. And then what Walt's, job was, or what Walt's input was, and Peter's and Joshua's, and all three people, from what I know, were at the negotiating table when Uber and Lyft was at the table negotiating these rates and rights for drivers. And I just want to hear all of it so we can transfer that, or we can amplify your voices, because I personally am going to do anything and everything I can in my power to push this model throughout the country. And with all that, floor is yours. You guys can pick who wants to start, and go ahead.
Yeah, well, it started with building a driver-led union, and then working in coalition with other partners, not just the drivers. And then when we had to relentlessly focus on driver demands, so that we made sure we were listening to the people who were out there who had the concerns. And then the fourth point was we wanted to know our opponent, because Uber and Lyft, they'll use every trick in the book, and I know you've seen it here and there. And you have to expect the unexpected and prepare for it. And then the last point is we had to do things step by step. We had to get concrete improvements and then build off of those. And each time we gained something, we got more power to get to the next step. So it wasn't like, building Rome in one day. We had to really just sort of build off it. And we still are building off of it, because the
Okay. Yeah, we lost Walt for a minute. Peter, you're the president of the Washington Drivers Union, right? Current president. How did you start the union? What was your thought process?
Well, like Walter just mentioned it, thank you, Sergio and Chris. My name is Peter Quill. I'm a president of Driver Union. And you mentioned already my biography. I don't want to go there. You say a lot. Thank you. Appreciate it. When we started, actually, we were drivers. I was originally a cab driver. And then when the company came, they gave a lot of money to the drivers. People moved from taxi cab company to Uber. We moved, all of us. And then we see the decline in the next 2 years. That was 2012, 2014. The decline of price, termination of drivers, and all those things. So we decided to form a union, form organization. We start at the gas station, talking with one another, drivers, what's going on, and that's how we started. Then when we see that as a very strong union, we say, well, let us find expert that can help us, expert and knowledgeable people that can help. Then we join the Teamster Local 117, help us.
Okay, so
doing
Joshua, this is where Teamsters and you come into play, right? So there is a drivers union who is looking for some maybe leadership or some guidance, or some contacts in the legislative bodies of the state, and you did have that. And so what was your role in all of this at the start?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having us, Chris and Sergio. And a lot of this started, even before my involvement at the union. And I'm glad you ground it in, Peter's experience and the experience of drivers coming together and saying, hey, we need to do something. We need to have more power together than we have separately, because that's where it, is the foundation. But, it's also true that there are, there's a broad labor movement, right? There's, community organizations that have, kind of a history of running successful campaigns to win improvements. And, Teamsters Union, has been around in the transportation industry since when transportation was, run in teams of horses. That's really where the name Teamsters comes from, actually, right? So Teamsters had, in our neck of the woods, a history before Uber and Lyft were in existence of working with drivers in the for-hire transportation industry. And so it was kind of a natural place for Uber and Lyft drivers who wanted to organize to come and gain support and connections. And but it doesn't stop there. When we won the Seattle policy, the driver leaders built a coalition, not just of labor, but also of more than 70 plus community organizations, the mosques where people pray, religious communities, affordable housing, transportation and transit advocates, to come together and say, look, the driver issues are not just the worker, the individual worker, right? But it's about all of our community. And that's the kind of power that, is important in the playbook. It's not just getting the right policy. Policy is important, right? But it's about how do you build enough power to win that policy. And that is the combination of drivers organizing together. It's got to start there, right? And then building that coalition with labor, community, faith-based organizations to, kind of put your hands on the levers of power at City Hall or at the state capitol.
Yeah. So from my understanding, it started all in the city of Seattle, right? This, once the city passed, city legislatures, as you may or may not know, the same thing is happening now in Minneapolis, right? So the Minnesota governor vetoed a bill that was passed by both houses of the state, but he vetoed it, unfortunately, with the lobbying power of these two companies. And but now they're coming back. Now I don't know if they spoke to you or not, but it seems like they are exactly following the playbook, meaning start in the city of Minneapolis, right? The city council is passing this ordinance. Well, they're discussing it on August 8th. They'll hopefully pass it with much higher rates for just the city. And then hopefully they're going to follow your playbook and spread it throughout the state, right? So is that what happened up in Washington State? It started within the city of Seattle, and then it kind of spread afterwards. Is that what took place, Walt?
Right. It started in Seattle.
Either one of you.
Go ahead, Will. Will.
Yeah. Well, we started in Seattle primarily because that's where most of the drivers who were organizing drove, but also we were able to, as Joshua said, build coalitions with other interests like the public transportation advocates and the affordable housing advocates, and have everybody come together and realize that we needed to make this a fair deal for all of us, so it's really sustainable across the board. And it was important that we had the voice as a union in order to do this, because previously, when I was complaining about the wage cuts that we were getting year after year, I'd be on Facebook just shouting, and people were like, "Yeah, we hear you," but nothing was happening.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I actually formed the union and got together with other drivers that we actually had the ability for our voice to be heard, and in a way that the political class couldn't ignore us. And we were lucky in a sense that there were some politicians that wanted to say, "Hey, we're going to do some good things for the drivers," but we actually had to put the brakes on it a little bit, because what they were proposing wasn't actually going to help us as much as it really should have. So we were able to stop them and say, "Hey, our voice to back you in this process. You got to make sure you do it right."
Yeah. So Peter, so you started with this union idea, Washington Drivers Union, right? And then you're starting in city of Seattle. You obviously you're a veteran driver. You know how many cuts you've been through as a driver, right? As far as fare cuts is concerned. And, I do, see this quite often in the driver community. Everybody talks a lot, but when it comes to doing stuff, nobody does anything, right? Everybody is pissed off that the rates are low. There's unjust deactivations, there's this, there's that. But when we're trying to put a group together, they all disappear. They're all run like headless chickens to all the corners of the world. I'm like, look, this is not a game we're playing. We're playing against Goliath. We have to have a united voice, right? How did you accomplish that, Peter? How did you bring all these drivers together? Because I sure know from our audience that there are a lot of people who are pissed off. If they could jump ship tomorrow to another company that does it better, they would do it in a heartbeat, right? Because the dissatisfaction rate is very high right now in the driver community outside Washington State. So how did you bring all these drivers together, Peter? What did you do? Because I want to do it. I mean, it's like, but then I can't.
Yeah, you're right, Sergio. It's kind of like tough, but when you have a commitment drivers, you have a way to do it. The way we used to do is we have a bank calling. We call all the drivers. We have the list when we meet them organizing. We take their name, their phone, their email, and when we plan to have an event or anything we want to do, we just go to all those phone numbers and call them, all of them, that we have an event on this day, and let us meet at this time in this location, especially Seattle, and we meet. We have that meeting, we have that rally, we have all what we want by calling all of them. And not only calling matter, but we go to where they gather. We have airport, we have a lot of drivers, like more than 200 drivers.
Yeah.
Sometimes go to 300 drivers. So we go to them and talk to them, hand them flyers, and we talk to them one-on-one. And another thing, we go to the gas station where they gather. When they take a break, they want to get a coffee or use a restroom, we go to them and tell them, hey, we have an event like this, we have things like this, we go. And mostly the community drivers do that job. It was not easy, it was tough. And on the road, some drivers also say, oh, it takes too long. They want to get out.
Yeah.
But the people who continue doing it, we are able to bring all of them.
Yeah. So there's power in numbers. We know that, right? But then, power in numbers is not something Uber is going to care about, or Lyft is going to care about, or the legislatures are going to talk about or care about until they have some sort of gain out of it or whatever it is, right? Because you have to have the ears. You can have all the ears in the world to listen to your problems, but then to bring legislation or do something about it takes more than just getting drivers together. So I feel like, the Teamsters had something to do with that. So Joshua, how did that process work? Like this transition from a driver union, Washington Drivers Union, coming to you guys, and then, because I want to understand the process. Now I clearly understand. It was like a grassroots kind of a, phone calls, door to door, basically getting drivers together, get the voices out there. And then now we have a united voice. And now we want representation. So was Teamsters, were you guys the one that was the representatives of this voice?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it helps to have a coalition. It helps to have institutional, backing, a political program, and neither of those elements by itself is going to do it, right? Without the engagement of drivers themselves, putting the demands on the table, putting the action, and being relentless and being, persistent. Because, remember, and not that this has to be the same way in other places, right? Because there has been some model built, there's been some, ground, plowed, but we didn't win the first time around, right? We passed a collective bargaining law in 2015 in the city of Seattle that got held up for, in court by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, at behest of Uber, right? And so when we look at what's happening in Minneapolis and the veto from the governor, right? What we say is, hey, we've seen this, before. That setback is just a step along the road to victory. Right. Yeah. Because all of the driver power that got organized, and you've seen the photos and the videos and everything of, drivers in the Capitol. Right. It put a demand on the political establishment that needs to be reckoned with. Right. And now it's coming back at the, city of Minneapolis. And, this playbook, whether it's in Seattle, whether it's in Minneapolis, whether it's in Chicago or other places. Right. The combination of driver power and institutional coalition power from organized labor and community is the recipe for building power. But and I know you'll get into this. It doesn't stop there. You still have to know your opponent and what are the tactics and strategies that they're going to play, right? Yeah. Because they're not, silent partners in this whole effort.
I mean, absolutely. I'm sure they rejected the idea initially, right? And then, but then, how was the process of getting them to the table? Because I know Walt has told me in the past that they threatened with a Proposition 22 like situation up in Seattle, and they said, if you guys don't this, we're going to do this. But I'm sure they had something to say about it as well. They didn't just, kneel down in front of drivers or unions and said, oh yeah, we accept these great rates, we'll give you all these benefits, right? So there was a process to get here. So legislation was passed in the city of Seattle. It lasted however long it lasted. And now, how do you take that from a city level to a state level, statewide level? So whoever wants to take that on, you guys can do that. And I really particularly am interested, since you all were there at the table, what did Uber come, or Lyft come to the table with? What were their rates? What were their proposals? I want to talk both sides about that, like how those negotiations went. Any one of you,
Well,
whatever.
Peter, I mean, you may want to, dive in on this, but I mean, on the first day that the pay rates increased in the city of Seattle, drivers said, wow, this is great, right? We're getting, increased, time, distance, et cetera, right? Now it's $1.50 a mile. It's, 64 cents a minute, right? And then on day 2, the driver said, hey, but what about my trip outside the city of Seattle? The airport's outside the city of Seattle. What about when I go down to Tacoma, which is only half an hour away or whatever? So it's that demand of now it's time to expand our pay, our rights and our protections, right? Came into play. And so that was the launching pad for, the expansion, statewide to go to the state capitol. And, I don't know, Peter, Walt, if you, I'll want to comment on that piece of it.
Yeah. It's kind of like drivers were motivated when the law of the Seattle went to effect. The driver got a protection, in the city of Seattle. And also city of Tacoma, as long as you pick up in Seattle, you get a protection. As long you come from Snohomish County, you pick up in Seattle, you get a protection. That one was a motivated factor. And also the pay raise in Seattle, that was limited only to Seattle, was a motivated factor. So it led to all the drivers to unite. How about if we go statewide? It will be good. And also the sick pay that we get 2020 during the COVID was for Seattle. But as long as you pick up in Seattle, you work in Snohomish or Pierre County, you get a sick pay. How about if we go out and make it as a statewide demand for all the drivers in Washington State? That's how all the drivers jump into that. We have to do it. And we did it with the support of the Teamster and the labor union as all, and also the community. Community also was with the one also leading, with us, supporting us all the way down till we make it to Olympia. And we made it in 2020 was sick pay, and 2022 we get this statewide, into a statewide law that protect drivers, that pay raise the pay for all the Washingtonian, and also that give them a benefit, including the sick pay for all of them, and also workers' comp in case you get protection, and the rest, included 2023 we get this medical and family leave, and these are the things that it was the drivers who started in Seattle and move along, all the drivers united and say we have to fight out. And this is not the end, so drivers still need more on what they deserve.
Yeah. So Walter, I know all of this is great and good, but it's not going to be without rejection or resistance or lobbying or whatever they do that they have to do, right? So you can't go to Uber. Yeah, you can't go to Uber and say, I want this and this and this. If I'm not going to drive, I don't care. There's 10,000 other drivers that are going to drive. So there was some give and take here, right? It wasn't like you demanded and they said yes.
Yeah, no, we had to navigate through the political process at the state level. But that was made a lot easier by being able to show that we did things in Seattle and Uber and Lyft said the sky was going to fall, and lo and behold, there's still a sky out there. So by being able to show that, drivers can actually make sustainable wages, and the system doesn't have to break, and we don't have to lose our flexibility, and we can get things like deactivation protection and stuff like that. That enabled us to be able to make a good argument against the default things that Uber and Lyft go around all the time. And they'll send you push notifications on your phone saying, dun, 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 this new bill is going through and it's going to cause you to lose this, that, and the other. And we had to deal with that. Having of Seattle being successful really helped in diffusing the endless lies and misdirection that Uber and Lyft were doing in order to continue to underpay us and give us no rights and benefits.
Yeah, so it seems like it's like I compared this to an analogy, if I could put it in other words, is it starts like a little small fire, right? And then you build a fire up, right? It started in a little Seattle,
throwing things
and
in
then it didn't make sense that it shouldn't be statewide, and then Seattle, it was in existence in the city of Seattle for a while. All the Uber, sky is falling, demand is going to get crushed, nobody's going to do it, you're going to lose your flexibility. None of that happened, right? Because every time I hear that in any other city, I have said it to Uber and Lyft myself. I said, show me the data. You want to pull out? Go ahead, pull out. Have a nice day. But show me the data, because you demand data, you run on data. Your data doesn't support any of it. But they do it because they can take advantage of drivers who are not united, and they go, oh my God, I don't want to lose my flexibility. Oh my God. But I know it's BS. I know it's all fluff, right? So it starts small, and then you guys keep building and building, and every year it seems like you're adding something to it, right? And you have like a few more minutes, but I want to hear seriously how the negotiations were at the table. I mean, what did Uber want? What did you guys give up, if you gave up anything? Because look, we're all talking about like this is some great, best thing since sliced bread. At the current situation of gig work and rideshare driving, it is. Now, is it comparable to what it was 2015 and 16 in LA or other major cities? No, we were swimming in cash those days. But we know what the trend is. The trend is not your friend as a rideshare driver. Earnings are less and less and less and less and less. And now with this upfront fares, we have another cut. I have no doubt that it is. So what was that negotiation like? Like, you guys didn't go and say, oh, we want $1.50 and 64 cents, otherwise we're not going to drive or whatever. How did that work out?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that you're right, Sergio. With any labor situation where you're bargaining with a with a corporation, and we just saw Teamsters nationally got to a tentative agreement with UPS, right? That's going through the process of getting ratified by the members right now, and members are voting on it. There's a give and take in that they've got their interests, workers have their interests, right? The company saw the success of the union drivers in the city of Seattle and saw that Playbook was going to go from city to city to city to city, right? So of course, one of their interests as a company, it's not surprising. They said, well, if we're going to get beaten city by city by city, maybe we should have a statewide framework that we can at least talk about some of the details on, right? And so there is that kind of sometimes you don't even call it negotiation, you call it advocacy back and forth, because you're advocating with the lawmakers on the political process, right? Yeah. But I mean, even under the statewide framework, there is now a negotiation. We started by talking in 2015, they held up collective bargaining in the courts, right? Yeah. Under Washington state law now, they are required to negotiate over their deactivation appeals processes with the union, right? Yeah. And those negotiations are happening right now. Of course, they have their priorities. They don't want to have anybody questioning what they do. They don't want to pay a driver that they wrongfully deactivated, right? Yeah. Drivers have a different set of priorities. Yeah. So, that that conversation, plays itself out. They've got their interest. Drivers have their interests. I think that the thing that I think listeners from around the country would should know is that it's not that there's a secret sauce of exactly what is the policy that they will agree to, right?
Yeah.
They will agree to whatever drivers have built enough power to demand.
Yeah.
Right. Because believe me, if it weren't for the efforts that Brother Peter and Brother Walt talked about building a driver union to have power, about building the coalition to build power, about winning at the city of Seattle, where their strategy was just to say no, and then they saw that they got beat, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't agree to any of it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's about building enough power that you can force the companies either by legislation, by negotiation, by public shame, whatever's the tool you've got in your toolbox. #know your worth, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking at your shirt, right?
Yeah.
To put the driver interest forward. If that makes sense, brother.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, to me, it has made sense quite a while. I've been following the Seattle, Washington State story for a while. In fact, Harry, before me, has interviewed a couple of legislators up from Seattle when this was just starting, right? And I've listened to that a couple of times. So I'm going like, this is great. I mean, what's wrong with this picture? And that was like back in 2018, 19. I'm like, I don't see anything wrong with this. So, Walt, I mean, I need a list from you of all the things you guys have in Seattle, okay? I know about your rates, and I know what the Washington rates are, but, give me a laundry list of your benefits that you have accumulated over the last, 3 years or so.
Okay, well, starting with deactivation protections. So we have a appeals process, which we're in the final stages of negotiating with Uber and Lyft to make sure that drivers have a very rapid way to get back on the network if they've been wrongly deactivated, and also get back pay for the time that they weren't able to work and feed their families. So that's a big one. We've managed to win reactivation for over 500 drivers alone just in Seattle, and then now as we go statewide, that's undoubtedly going to get bigger. And then so now we have sick leave, which was temporary in the COVID, but after the emergency, now that was going to go away. So we've got a new sick leave, which is staying forever, and we've got workers' compensation protection, which Uber and Lyft will be paying into. We have Josh,
We've got unemployment rights that are permanent for drivers, the same unemployment system as all workers in the state of Washington, not just a temporary COVID measure, right?
Yeah.
And paid family medical leave is coming online next year, which is the same paid family medical leave protection that all workers have in the state of Washington, which with one caveat, which is for all workers in the state of Washington, unless you've got a generous employer or negotiated it in a union contract, there's a split in the premiums between the worker and the company. Actually, on the version that we won in Washington State, Uber and Lyft are going to foot all of the cost for drivers who sign up for paid family medical leave. So we're really excited to launch that program next year as it rolls out.
So all these things that you guys add up, it costs money to do as a company. But I am pretty sure they pass it on to the passenger. And at some point, I mean, economics is economics. You got to take it at face value. There's price elasticity. People are going to stop paying for very expensive trips because, Uber and Lyft have to provide, all these benefits to the drivers. I get it, right? I mean, that part of it I get. Are we reaching to a point that up in Washington State or Seattle, we're seeing a lot of pushback from the customer not willing to pay for this convenience because they were paying maybe, $20 for a 10-mile trip. Now they're paying $40 for a 10-mile trip, right? Because I know that Uber and Lyft will pass all of it on. They're not going to lower their take rate. They're not going to lower what they're making. And do you guys worry about that at some point there may be some pushback and business may really die or collapse and people just use public transit again? Or I'm just being the devil's advocate. I don't know. I'm just asking.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
for this to work, it has to be sustainable for everybody. And so, yeah, I mean, if passengers will only ride on the platform if they can have it be subsidized by somebody else, well, then these are people who should find something else. I mean, they're public transit for a reason. But so far, we haven't found that people are not willing to pay fair amounts. Prices have gone up, but usually not because they have to pay us. It's just because Uber and Lyft are gouging. If you look at the Taylor Swift concert that just finished, I have screen caps where you could take a 3-block ride that for $45 to $50, and they hadn't put any pricing in yet for the drivers. So I'd have made the Seattle minimum $560, and they were charging $50. And then when they finally did get a surge price in there, it was like $8. But now it was $60 to go 1 mile and $120 to go 8 miles.
Yeah.
And so you're giving me $8 more and charging the customer $80 more? That doesn't,
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, I'm going to give you each one more minute because, as I said, I'm going to be in touch with you guys. You guys are going to teach me a lot more before I go make a fool out of myself in front of some legislator, because I really am believing in the system and I think it's possible. And I'm not saying what's done in Washington State or Seattle is possible in, some small town in Arkansas or wherever it is, right? Every city has their own cost of living, increases or expenses, whatever they are, and they have to have different rates. But ultimately, the goal is the same, right? Better earnings, more rights as independent contractors, or whatever they want to call us these days. And add on to these rights. Let's not build Rome like Walt said in one day, but let's just add on. Let's start somewhere though, and I think that starting somewhere is here now, because I think we had enough as drivers. So I will speak to Peter, obviously pick his brain, how he started his grassroots campaign. I mean, I'm always in touch with Walt and Josh. Now I'm going to be talking to you about, all the ins and outs of the backroom negotiation tactics and whatever you guys do. But you guys will be my eyes and ears. And I have a voice, I have a platform. I want to use it properly. So I mean, I'm all in. So, I give you each a minute, in closing, Walt, with you, I'm going to start with you. Tell me what you do not like about what you have. What is your complaint?
I guess
because look, as rideshare drivers, as if I know one thing about rideshare drivers, I could pass countrywide $150 and 64. There will be something complaining. Somebody complaining again tomorrow. They'll be complaining.
My complaint is twofold. A, I don't want to be the best. I don't want to have the best situation in the country. I want somebody else to beat me so that I can get better. Because I mean, yes, we've solved some problems, but we have other things that we still need to get better on, like the Uber XL and the more premium situations. What they're making is maybe a fraction of a penny above what the regular Uber X makes, because Uber doesn't want to pay any more than they have to. So we have more things that we have to try to see if we can improve on. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is, if Minneapolis and Minnesota can get strong laws, then we can look at them and say, hey, look, we need some of that too. And each of the jurisdictions can build off of each other and help us move forward. And, I can't think of anything negative in a system that now pays me something that is fair, and it gives me benefits and protections that I didn't have before. It's a win-win. Yes, more drivers have been, flooding into some areas in Seattle, but in this line of work, you always have to sort of shift where you are and move around and go where drivers are and go where they aren't and figure out the sweet spot. And, for those of us who just want to sit in our living room and press cash like the good old days, well, things are more competitive. But I agree with you. I can't think of why we wouldn't want to have sustainable wages.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one, because, a lot of people are going to say, oh, there's been more drivers on the platform because it's paying really well. My attitude has always been, even when there are not enough drivers, it was like quantity over quality is not my thing. I'd rather do one trip for $50 an hour than do 4 trips for $50 an hour. That's it. So to me, it fits my style anyway. But I thought maybe you would have. But what you said is not a complaint. It's like what you're trying to achieve. That's like, Peter, do you have any complaints, buddy? When you, it's like, do you have any complaints with what you guys have up there before you leave?
Yeah, well, first
on.
of all, this is an amazing show. I would like, before I go to that, I would like to shout out my legend, the pirate that been fighting with us since we start. I want to shout out for my friend Dan Curry and also to Sukshen and many of the drivers here in Washington State. They did their best. I'm so glad we have this guy in this state, and we are so happy with them.
Yeah, I'm going to learn a lot from you, so I'll be in touch with you because I if and when Prop 22 is gone, I want to do the same thing in LA and then go statewide. But we'll see how that goes.
Look, Sergio, you are invited on September 28th. We have a big tourist celebration here in Washington State. I love the RideShare. I want you to come and see what we are doing. And we talk more about all this. So you are invited. Mark it in your calendar, September 28th.
You know what? I may take you up on it because one of our contributors lives literally next door to Walt in Bellingham, Washington. His name is Zach. And, he does deliveries and he does videos for our channel. So, I may just shack up with him up there for a couple of days and visit you guys in Seattle. So, hey, hold on. I'll be in touch with you on that one. How about you, Joshua? I know. I don't know. Do you drive, or are you just in the background, or?
Not me. I leave it to the experts. But I mean, you talk about what are the complaints, and you're right. Spend 60 seconds with any driver, they'll tell you 20 things that need to be done, right? So we've got a survey out that's going on right now with the driver community. What do you want to win next? And there's no shortage of ideas, right? And that is, it comes down to the point, right? That you build. It's like taking steps up a ladder, right? You start with this one and then you work on the next one, right? And look, these companies, Walt said it, talk about Taylor Swift. They'll charge a customer $120, pay the driver $30, right? There comes a time when you do have to talk about the fairness of, the rider and driver coalition that, what's a fair amount for a rider to be charged? They sold dynamic pricing to all of us, not on the idea that they'd pay Wall Street shareholders more or Silicon Valley executives more. They said, we need to sometimes raise your price to get driver supply to give you a shorter wait time, right? Yeah. So, there's a lot of issues still to work on. And, what I know is, the history of, decades and decades and decades of worker struggles. The type of work that people have may change. They might call it the gig economy today. They'll call it something else tomorrow, right? But a fundamental principle remains the same, is that when workers come together, they have more power to make changes than when they're separate. So, I don't expect that we'll have any shortage of issues to work on tomorrow.
I'm so thankful for all you showing up. I know we had our technical glitches or not, but, like I said, I'm going to push with everything I have, about duplicating this model to a point in every city and every state of the country where to get rid of this upfront fares disaster that we have. So
everybody deserves to earn a sustainable living. I don't care where you are. We all do.
I agree with you 100%. So Peter, much love. Joshua, Walt, thank you so much. And, we will keep, hitting your doorbell, and we'll keep asking questions, and, we'll have you on again. And if there's any changes, you guys will come on and tell us what the changes are, what the additional benefits that you receive for these drivers. I'm all in. So let's do it. And again, thank you so much for coming on.
When we fight, we say, when we fight, we win. So let's keep fighting. That is our slogan. Yeah.
I'm with all that. Again, thank you so much, guys. Much appreciated.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Love, brother.
All right, bye-bye. All right. So that was a fantastic insight into what's going on in Washington, what's going on starting in Seattle and spreading throughout the state, especially when it comes to, the benefits that they're working on. everything that they're going for and all that. So thank you guys for coming on. Appreciate that. And if it's something that you guys are interested in, email Sergio. How can you get started? Different things like that. Obviously, being a grassroots movement, it's going to take some time. It's going to take some effort. But in the grand scheme of things, it could have a nice payoff at the end. So something that, if you guys are interested, definitely hit up Sergio, and he can try hooking you up with somebody over there in Washington. Exactly, kind of more on what they've done or anything like that.
Well, yeah. Now that we have a better idea, we will pick, leaders in their communities. I mean, I'm not everywhere. I'm in LA, and I'm stuck with Prop 22. But there are, tons of cities and states do not have anything like Prop 22, and this is the time. This is the time you make a stand. I'll be glad to help you all out with it, where to go, what to do about it, because now I know enough to support you. And if you want to learn more about it, bring me up. I'm here, Sergio at RideShareGuy.com.
Yep, absolutely. But let's shift a little bit, going from Washington and Seattle on the West Coast. Let's kind of go in the Midwest a little bit with Minnesota. So today they were doing the vote. I haven't heard anything yet, but I'm sure we'll have something probably next week when it comes to the results of what's going on there. But yeah, let's kind of talk about that.
Yeah, today is the hearing, and the vote will be probably in the next couple of weeks. And our contributor Joe will keep us up to date with that. He's in Minneapolis. So that, as we all know, we talked about it quite a bit. We were all upset, right? Look, this battle is, we're in a war. We're going to lose some battles, but we're going to try to win the war, right? So part of the battle that we lost was, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, shot the bill down that was passed by both houses, and it was a huge disappointment to everybody, to the drivers' union, Minnesota Drivers Union up there. And but he said, this is not the time to pass this aggressive legislation on. And now he's forming a committee, and and this committee involves all sides, includes the TNCs, the Uber and Lyft, includes the drivers, includes the politicians, includes the legislatures, includes everybody. And eventually they had agreed to a much higher rate, but Governor Walz said a lot of the community is going to be unserved now, because a lot of people who are needy to use these services are going to be priced out. And that's what Uber played the game. Uber said, look, a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. They are, they own the apps. They can put schedules on. That's why they called you. You may become an employee. That's what they played. They played the game really well. That's what they said. And there was
the same crap that they pulled in Washington, and none of that happened. So
none of that happened.
Don't fall for their tactics.
Yeah, they're all for that. And so Governor Tim Walz's administration has assembled a group of rideshare drivers, members of the public, and representatives from Uber and Lyft to advise them on how to address wage and safety concerns raised by workers, which is very, very valid. And to me, the committee is tasked with recommending policy changes by January of 2024, which is coming up in a few months. And the ultimate goal of this is to provide drivers with fair treatment, fair compensation, but also make sure this type of service is available to the state of Uber and Lyft drivers, but also to the passengers. I mean, look, there's two-sided marketplace here. We cannot just say ourselves, me, 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 me. Look where the country is, because we keep saying me, 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 me. It's just not work. So there are people who depend on these services that have to get served, and everybody should be on the table, and I like that. I like that quite a bit. But on the last paragraph, Chris, look at what that paragraph says. But emails in the weeks leading up to that veto showed Walz's administration was being heavily lobbied to reject the proposal. This was the original one that he vetoed, according to records obtained through a data practices request, right? So they do a FOIA request.
Who didn't expect that one?
Yeah, who do you think? Who was shocking, right? Yeah. So look, no politician is beyond lobbying, okay? And I'm not going to call the governor out, with all due respect, but he caved. So now he's putting a committee together. We'll see. Well, look, the fight's not over. Drivers will come back. If there is a will, there is a way. Just like we heard, Peter say and Walt say, there's power in numbers. But when I do need
Mhm.
you guys, do not disappear on me, because everybody talks a big game. Everybody's complaining. Oh, this is not enough. This is not enough. That's not enough. I want this. I want that. Well, if we're going to try to get you that, you need to stand by. Okay. And one of the major, according to Governor Walz, he said that elder advocates, who wrote to the governor noting many aging Minnesotans rely on rideshare services to see family and to get medical appointments. I get that. There is Lyft Medical now, Uber Medical. In a May 22 letter, Christine Sundberg, executive director of Elder Voice Family Advocates, expressed that if these, the law that was passed was not vetoed, all these people who need medical services, go visit family or whatever not, will be priced out of the system. First of all, these are probably state-funded programs, right? And, maybe the state needs to negotiate better deals if the drivers are going to get hired. But my concern is on this. I want to hear all sides, obviously. I don't want to say, get lost to the passenger just because I'm a driver's advocate. I understand where these companies are coming from. They're a business. They need to be making money. But I think what they did in Seattle and then spreading out to Washington State is exactly what needs to happen in Minnesota, and starting with Minneapolis. And lastly, one representative from Uber and another from Lyft will sit on the task force, great, as well as a labor member, great. Just like when we met, Joshua was a labor member, a representative for cities and disabilities advocate, great. Everybody should have a voice. And by doing that, we could come up with a conclusion that today's upfront fares and rates that upfront fares put, in front of drivers is ridiculous. It's just out of control. I'm not going to say anything is better than upfront fares, but, whatever they're proposing in Minneapolis and whatever may come out of this as a statewide system is pretty much going to be much better than, these upfront fares that we're dealing with, all the shaving that we're dealing with. So, I'm hopeful, man.
And all that.
I'm hopeful,
Well, the one thing though that I'd like to see besides just an Uber and Lyft member, as well as a labor member and a representative for cities and disabilities advocate, I'd also like to see a couple of drivers or driver advocates who are on there. Make sure that they're on there.
Yeah, their drivers will be there. Ali, he's like the Peter of Minnesota. He's the head of the Minnesota Drivers Union. So everybody's going to be on the table, just like it was in Washington State. And everybody should be on the table, because look, passengers are going to pay these higher fares. They should have a voice, right? Mm-hmm. And look, Uber and Lyft are the agent in between. They should have a voice, drivers definitely should have a voice. Unions representing drivers should definitely have a voice. I think that's the only way you can come up with a consensus and start building, because without this, we're just going the wrong direction here, Chris. This is just wrong.
It shouldn't be going down. It should be going up, especially with the cost of living going up, inflation, all these things. I mean, I shouldn't be making less driving per mile than the IRS standard mileage deduction. That should be like just the costs for running your vehicle. That should cover the insurance, the tires, the car costs. But what about on top of that? So seeing something like in Minneapolis, where they're talking about $1.40 per mile, in Washington, I think it's $1.54 per mile, things like that. When you're seeing stuff like that, now you're taking that 62.5 cents, but you're also getting, 80 cents or something more, plus you're getting the time. So what was it in Minnesota? In that one, they're talking about 51 cents per minute.
Just that alone in
Washington, it's 54%.
Look, 64 cents a minute in Washington State or Seattle is just in itself is like almost $40 an hour, right? 64 times 60 minutes. Same thing in Minneapolis. 51 cents times 60 minutes is almost $32 an hour. So just the time component is going to make a huge difference, right? I mean, last week,
what Walt said is, when you have something sustainable, that is much better. And the current position for the majority of drivers, you might be out there making so much money for here and there, but all the other times you might be making not really much anything, and you got to try to even it out. So Yeah, it's got to be sustainable across all boards, and that
I agree.
includes drivers, driver pay, and everything associated. So yes,
I agree.
as we said, if you're interested in getting something going in your area and starting out, or going to a local city, starting out there, that is the first steps in a little bit of a process. But like I said, it's definitely going to pay itself in the long run. Then going on, let's talk about last week. Uber announced their earnings, had some interesting information there. Lyft just came out earlier this morning. I know, Sergio, you listened to that, had some interesting aspects there, but we're going to be talking about Lyft's earnings next week, so we can really dive in and look at what's going on. So let's talk about Uber's earnings, and they want to try to beat everybody to the punch.
Well, I mean, look, we did a very popular video a few days ago, right? CFO is quitting, and Dara Khosrowshahi was selling shares. He sold a couple 100,000 shares. I got a lot of emails today saying, oh, they knew it. That's illegal. He shouldn't be selling because the stock went down. People, these are all legal things. All executive have these programs, stock selling programs that happens at a given time, given, price. There's nothing illegal about it. Look, the reason stock went down is because stock had gone up a lot. I mean, stock was $20 a share 6 months ago. It hit 50 today. So in 6 months, up over 100%, what happens? Profit takers take profit. We call it on Wall Street. Buy it on rumors, sell it on fact. Yes, Uber. Hey, Gabe, you said they will never turn profitable. They did. If you believe the numbers, they were GAAP profitable the first quarter. First time ever in, 12 years? GAAP profitable. That's real money, people. They are turning profitable, and they had promised that they would turn profitable by the end of the year. They did a quarter before. And, I'm going to give you short and sweet on this. Nelson Chai is leaving in January 2024, which is the CFO, has helped the company straighten their stuff up with Dara Khosrowshahi for the last 5 years. And, shares fell about 6% today, everything, all the numbers were good. Their take rate, by the way, Chris, is at 29.3%, is at an all-time high. They have 137 million people using the platform. 137 million people. It's insanity. There's only 165 million adults in this country, or something like that. I'm not even sure, bro.
Well, that's because Uber Teen now they're training their teens to start using their platform.
That's going to be interesting. That's going to be interesting.
Well, either way, I keep getting notifications from Uber Eats. Hey, please use their service. It will give you 40% off. I'm like, if you start, paying or if I start paying less than what I would have to go when I picked it up, if I have to go pick something up at $18 and I want it delivered, and you're telling me it's 40% off and it's still coming in at $23, no, that doesn't make smart sense to me. But and then I keep getting Uber trips. I always drive everywhere, but I keep getting Uber just sent me a thing. It's like, oh, you can get 2 rides for 20% off. It's like, okay, cool. I'll use that when I go out drinking, but I'm not going out right now. But I mean, hey, good job for them. I kind of had a feeling. I kind of had a feeling that they were going to be GAAP profitable this time around, actually, because of the CFO stepping down. And the reason why is because there was part of the one article a couple of weeks ago when we highlighted it. That was talking about how he was there for the building phase, and you're still going to continue building, but at that point it's like a shift. Now you're GAAP profitable, you want to stay that. So I think that once they hit that, I think he hit the point where it's like, okay, I'm good. And I think that was kind of like the writing on the wall saying, hey, look, yes, this is going to be the profitable time. When it comes to DK selling the shares, I think that's for him, it was probably just a smart decision. He didn't sell everything. He sold, a chunk of them. He bought low, sold high. That's what you want to do. And the share price is still higher than what he sold it for. So it's not like it went down. I mean, it rose after he sold it and continued.
Well, I mean, you know how people are, though, right? They're all always thinking negative, saying, "Oh, he must have known." I'm like, "There's nothing that he knows. He obviously knows. He's the CEO." But for a company this size, at 135 billion run rate a year, billion now, Look at the mobility
Yep.
growth bookings, 16.73 billion for the quarter, up 25%, Chris, year over year. I mean, they're at this size, they're growing. Delivery gross bookings, 15.6 billion. I mean, this company is still growing, and they're getting.
That beat your projection. You thought it was only going to be, what was it, last week or 2 weeks ago? You said
Yeah,
only
I
like
said
3,
single digits
4%.
to like flat growth, and they're still in
Yeah.
double digits. You know, I mean, I
Well,
said
you
for
know
the
what?
delivery.
Yeah, you know what though? That the way where the quarter ended. So we still got, you know, when Q3 comes out in 3 months,
Yeah,
I
but
wonder if you'll see that gross bookings up to 12%, or if it'll be
no,
something.
they already
uh,
said it though. They already said it that it's going to slow down some more, right? Because look,
Mhm.
at 135 billion sales rate, you can't grow something 20%, 20%. It's just there's law of
No, you
averages.
can't.
There's law of averages. You know what I mean? So, but
Yeah.
you know, here's the number that we need to emphasize. Okay, remember last quarter how many billion trips they did in one quarter? 2.1.
Was it 1.8?
No, 2.1.
2.1,
Now,
that's right. Now it's
now,
2.3.
now 2.3. They are doing 25 million trips a day, more than 1 million an hour.
Yep.
Look at the scale of this.
Just imagine the nickels and the dimes that adds up to.
That's what I
That
just thought.
adds
Because,
up to a lot of nickels and dimes right there,
yeah,
people.
because when we first remember when we first did the nickel and dime business, they were like at 1.8 billion trips. Then we got 20
Yeah,
cents.
that's why I'm thinking the 1.8.
Yeah, now dime of a 2.3 billion is 230 million. Now we're familiar with the numbers. 230 million a quarter. I mean, look, honestly, I give these people credit because 2.3 billion, more than 1 million trips per hour, every hour, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Million trips, not $1 million worth. I'm kind of go, no wonder this shit sometimes goes haywire. And I'm shocked that it really works as well as it does, to be honest with you. I was like,
Sometimes,
wow.
yeah. But then when there's like all these glitches that they say, it's like, all right, come on. Like the surge mystery glitch that we've deciphered to be now putting into code. So
the company's doing
like
well.
That.
We gotta wait for Lyft, you know.
Yep. So yeah, we'll talk about Lyft's next week. It was pretty interesting there too. Not the same as Uber, but we'll talk about them next week. So let's move on. And we like to mention our display ride dash camera. Obviously, it's not ours, but we like it because of many different reasons. Obviously, the biggest one that I always love to talk about is the cloud recording. So as it's recording, it's going up to the cloud immediately. You know, I'm sitting in front of my computer right now, looking at the camera, talking to you guys. So we're going up into the cloud. It's coming into your phones, your computers, wherever you're watching this. And, you know, it's pretty amazing to see. So something like that when it comes to a dash camera is really great, especially when it comes to an accident. Something could happen to the camera itself. Something could happen to the memory card, anything like that in other cameras. I mean, SD card, let's be real, is probably the worst medium for storage in any way, shape, or form. And, you know, there can always be corrupt files, and you may need that. So it's just something when it comes to redundancy where if it's up to the cloud, you know, you got that where you can save it and you have it immediately. Same thing if somebody tries grabbing it, throwing out the window, whatever it might be. Guess what? You're already on camera. Too bad, so sad. The police are going to get you. So if you enter code RSG20, you're going to get 20% off. So it'll be $20 a month instead of $25, which gets you the dash camera and all the ability to upload to the cloud, all that data. That's included in the monthly fee there. So the good thing is too, it's also tax deductible because it is a business expense, not tax advice, but just something you should know.
Yep, I agree, 100%. Nothing to add. It's a great system, great little camera, indoor, inside, outside. It's 5K now. Go get it. $20. Nothing.
Oh yeah.
Not even money. Really, seriously.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
So let's move on and let's talk about our future segment, the gig work for the future financial freedom. Say that 5 times fast. But this time, what we want to do, we want to talk about, should you put Uber driving or Lyft driving, Doordash delivering, whatever it might be on your resume? Before we get into it, yes or no, and then a quick reason why, Sergio. What do you think? and don't go with what we have on the slides.
Oh no,
Your
absolutely.
personal
No,
thought.
I will absolutely, in today's economy, I will absolutely put Uber driver or a delivery worker in my resume, just for the fact that you're dealing with customers. If you're going to get into customer service, if you're going to get into sales, this is all going to help you because you're
Problem
dealing with
solving.
humans. Absolutely, I would
Yep.
put it in there, and I don't see any harm.
I agree there. I agree there. And not only that, one of the things too, a lot of drivers will be there for a longer time. I'm sure a lot of people watching, we've seen the same names in the chat for since we started back last April. We still see we see a lot of new names, which is great. But there's a lot of drivers who are driving multiple years. I started Uber in 2015 or 2016. I can't remember now. 2016. And Lyft was a little bit after that. So I mean, we're going on how many years at this point? So it shows people. I mean, just because you put Lyft driver and it's for a certain time doesn't mean maybe you were driving the entire time. Maybe you were, maybe you weren't. But it shows employers that love that. So yeah, I think it's a good thing, especially if there's gaps. They don't like gaps for some reason. Whether there's just cause for it or not, even if there's gaps, sometimes your application can get thrown out, your resume can get thrown out. So if you don't have gaps because you're doing Uber, Lyft, Doordash, whatever it might be, gig economy, then I think it's something that is a benefit to you. And dealing with customers is huge when it comes to it. Problem solving. There's so many problems you see out on the road. And it gives you a whole different sense of perception when you're actually out on the road dealing with people, driving people, and all that. Even food delivery, you're dealing with customers, you're dealing with merchants, you're picking up the food and all that. So you got to deal and be personable there. There's a lot of things there. So I personally think
I agree with everything you said. I mean, a lot of people look down upon the gig work. And they all say get a real job or whatever, this nonsense.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, constantly I hear that nonsense, bro. It is a job. Okay?
You know what's funny? I tell people ask, what do I do? I say, I do YouTube. Really? Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Like, quite a few people will say that. They're like, because they haven't really heard the fact that somebody may be doing it on a fuller time basis. Here at the RSG on my channel, and then doing Uber and Lyft and Curry and a couple other things as well too. But I mean, I think it's just something that's different, and unique. Uber and Lyft. I don't think there's anything wrong with that there either. And I think getting a real job, so you can sit in an office cubicle, hating your life while you're sitting in a cubicle. When I can go out, I can drive, I can look at the sun, I can, take a little bit of time off. I can get up, walk around, throw the windows down, listen to my music, listen to a podcast, do whatever I want to do. And you're sitting in a cubicle making maybe the same as me, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, maybe yours is a little more predictable. I don't know. But in the reality of things, it is a job.
There's no shame in gig work. There's no shame in gig work. Like there's 6 million, today Uber said there are 6 million couriers and drivers actively working on their platform today. Doordash is going to come out with their earnings on Wednesday. They're going to say the same thing. There's 6 million plus. There's 12 million people. That's a lot of people deciding to do the same thing. If they thought W-2s were so great, they would go back to W-2s. So stop people saying, looking down on Uber drivers. Oh, you're just an Uber driver. Yeah, I am just an Uber driver. Okay, what's your problem, right? Because I just saved your life. I took you from point A to point B safely while your ass was drunk in my back seat. So, but long story short, a lot of employers do not like gaps in resumes. And if you have gaps, and if you don't put Uber and Lyft, and you're going to lie about it, and you're going to probably get busted about it, what you should do is you should show with a face your reality. Yes, you did drive for Uber and Lyft for 6 months while you were laid off from another W-2. Well, create, with positive soft skills that you can represent. What are you doing when you're driving? Well, you're meeting, if you do 20 trips, you're going to meet 20 different individuals. You can strike up conversations. You can find out about, where they're going, their cities, or about your own city yourself because you don't know. The other thing is, you are into safety because you want to take care of the customer point A to point B safely. So there are a lot of soft skills that you are practicing while you're driving for Uber or Lyft. You may not even know it. You may not think they're important, but to the employer that you're putting the resume in are very important things, especially if it's going to be a customer service job, a sales job, unless you're going to be a coder, nobody needs to drive for Uber and Lyft to be a coder. But in this world, a lot of W-2s, from retail to restaurant work to waiting tables to whatever it is that you want to do next, or better yet, have your own business. Now, by doing Uber and Lyft, you ran a small business on its own, right? You have to present your resume this way. You're not going to just sit there and say, I drove Uber. No, you have to present it in a way that makes it more palatable to the potential employer that you're looking to get hired by, because you are truly doing these things. If you've been listening to us for any length of time, we say, run this as your business. Now you have business running skills. If you're applying for a management job, well, you have business running skills. You ran your own business. Uber and Lyft is your small business. You had expenses. You had income. You save for your retirement. You put money aside for a cold, rainy day. All these things. This is running a business. So you have to present it that way. That's why you should never shy away from putting Uber, Lyft driving or delivery driving in your resume. But you have to present it in a package that's really, really attractive to the potential employer that you want to get hired by, right? So this says clearly in here that you should put you should present yourself with all these soft skills that you have, and which you do, right? So on the next screenshot,
even next to it says follow up with hard skills, and there's definitely some hard skills when it comes to driving around too. So it's just a matter of finding out what it is and problem solving. I think problem solving is a big thing.
Hard skills, Chris, are you dealing with the app? At a restaurant, right? You're dealing with the app. App is not easy to use. So look, this job, this gig work presents you with a lot of skills. You have to just make sure you formulate it in a way that your potential employer looks up to it as opposed to down to it, saying, oh, just another Uber driver. You understand? It's all about packaging, but I will not exclude it from your resume.
No, absolutely not. And then they talk about don't list each job separately, combine the similar jobs. So Uber and Lyft, very similar, rideshare driver, food delivery driver, whatever it might be, gig worker. There could be a lot of things. And then you could bullet point it out independently, or tell them your experience if there's an interview, and then also obviously the biggest thing is tailoring your resume to the job. So whatever job you're looking for, you want to show your strengths for that particular job when it comes down to it. So if it's customer service, you put customer service relations when it comes to being a rideshare driver, when it comes to food delivery, all that good stuff. So
as a job seeker, you need to optimize your resume to include the right buzzwords. We agree. Read the job description carefully and identify skills the employer wants. Well, I bet you anything, whatever the employer wants, some of the stuff you experience in your car with strangers in your car has gotten you ready for that job. Because look, you have to. This is the real world. You're dealing with humans, and unless you're going to write some articles on ChatGPT, you are going to deal with humans the rest of your life. So this, driving teaches you quite a bit of that. And you're dealing with different characters, drunks, sick people and happy people, upset people. You just learn how to manage yourself. And in conclusion, if you package all this correctly, right, and you present it in a way, not just by saying, I drove for Uber for 6 months. I'm like, no, it's not interesting enough. But you have to make sure whatever you're presenting fits the job that you're looking for. And if you made the decision to switch back to a W-2, congrats, because you got tired of the rat race, but you have to present it. And I personally would suggest that everybody should include their Uber and Lyft driving into their resume. Do not shy away from it. Just make sure you follow some guidelines to present it in a correct fashion, as opposed to just put, I drove Uber. Okay. And so we're going to continue this. Please send me your ideas, what you guys want to talk about. money, investing, whatever it is. Send me your ideas, and then we'll line them up and we'll talk about it without being financial advice.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then, so that's the segment for that. We're going to move on. We're going to be talking about your Lyft ride just got cheaper. Why? Oh, because they say that they laid off so many employees. So, I mean, we've been talking about this for the last, since David Risher came in, talking about how he's going to be getting rid of 1,000+ jobs when it comes to it. And, he did, which is a quarter of its staff. So it came in clean house. It was very similar to what Elon Musk did when buying X, formerly Twitter. So it's definitely going to help. It's going to save some money, and
Well, I mean, we listened to all David Risher's interviews when he first got the job, right? He says, I have learned how to do a lot with very little. That was a key word right there. And you guys can go back and check his interviews. He said that because that's what he did at Amazon's first days. He learned to do a lot with very little. Last 5 years or 10 years in his foundation for literacy around the world, he did the same thing. He learned to do a lot with a little. Well, when he took over Lyft, he figured he had a lot and he wasn't doing a lot. So now he made it little to do a lot. If you're still following me, that means, he had to let people go. And he said, this job, doesn't entail to have 5,000 people to do this, especially for others to pick up people from point A to point B, right? So, and you know what? I like the Business Insider because I have great contacts at Business Insider. But Alex, I don't agree with you. I don't think the Lyft ride got cheaper because the company laid off so many employees. Because that means when those savings are run out, does that mean your rides are going to go back up? No. He has a plan. He's going back to basics. He's, keeping it simple. And obviously, cost cutting is part of the business. Look, how many people are getting laid off from Amazon? How many people got laid off from Facebook? How many people got laid off from Twitter? All these high-tech companies.
How many people got laid off from Yellow?
Exactly. So to me, the guy's not doing anything different. I 100% support what he's doing. He's trying to turn a sinking ship around. Okay. Mm-hmm. And if that means 1,000 corporate employees are going to let go, if there means another 1,000 are going to let go, once he figures out that only maybe 1,500 people can do what 55,000 were doing, maybe another 1,000 will go. Because from what I've seen so far in the last 3 months since he took over, has been nothing but good things. Has it been earnings increasing, revenue increasing things? Yes and no. Yes, because there is a lot more information. The information is cleaner if you know how to use it. I think you can squeeze 10% more money out of it, earnings out of it. I haven't seen anything that he has. I say this is horrible. Why did they do this? So obviously, look, man, the platform is still working. It hasn't crashed. If you turn my Lyft app on,
I like what it says. I like what it says in the middle there. It says, as a result, it's claimed some market share from rival Uber, which we saw. I mean, if you looked at the earnings, it does have a little bit of market share change. So that is good. I mean, like I say, going back to when I was in Chicago doing that test between Uber and Lyft, I mean, it was blasting on Uber. It was crickets on Lyft. So seeing some change there, that's good.
Well, he said, he said, we're going to do one thing well. We're going to go back to basics. He said, we're going to take care of our two customers that we have. It's the driver and the passenger. He's doing that. And if you look at the earnings today that came out, they are definitely competing price-wise with Uber. Uber was a lot cheaper in 20 top cities in the US. Now, actually, Lyft is cheaper because I know from my own app, every time I pressed the trip until he showed up, Uber would be so much cheaper than Lyft. I would not even think of using it as a passenger. Now, it's either equal or Lyft is a little bit cheaper than Uber. Okay, so to me, he's competing. And I mean, the gist of the article is like, oh, he had to lay off people to make rides cheaper. No, I'm not buying that. No. He had to do what he had to do for the ship not to sink because it was about to sink. You know what I mean?
It was getting close. It definitely was.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of the reason why they wanted to get rid of John Zimmer and Logan Green, make them step down, because there was nothing innovative there. There was nothing new coming. And then, yeah, when we have David Risher on, we don't have a final date on exactly when. We are still working on that. Things have just been busy the last week with Denver for you, Sergio, and all of that good stuff. So, yeah, it's just been busy, but we will have a date nailed down. I'm hoping by next week we'll be able to let you know exactly what's going on. And then, yeah, hopefully we'll have David on, have a really great conversation when it comes to that. And then let's move on. Let's talk about Uber and Domino's. I got a pretty interesting take on this particular story. So we'll go through it real quick, and then I'll talk about my interesting take.
You know, we talk about show me the money, right? So Domino's is going to get bombarded with a lot more Uber Eats, but then they're not going to send the orders to Uber Eats drivers. They're going to use in-house drivers to, you know, ship those Uber Eats orders out. So, hey, go check it out. Show me the money. Here's another idea. Go get a driver job at Domino's and collect the tips. And I'm sure they have some min wage. And Chris knows about this because he's done some pizza delivery. You know, just for an article or a content, I may just try that for a month. Let's see how it works. I mean, they're going to hire a whole bunch of drivers. If you're sick and tired of driving people around, you know, they may even give you a car because they have a deal with Chevy Bolt. They're investing in electric cars. So give it a shot. You may make more money than rideshare driving until it picks up. So I'm all for it. I may even go look into it.
Yeah, and it's funny. So I mean, yeah, I did pizza delivery for 8 years, and honestly, it wasn't bad. I was making above minimum wage for a wage for hourly. I was working full time, sometimes overtime, and then on top of it, I was making tips. So. And, you know, I was one of the better drivers, so I would be taking, you know, probably double the amount of deliveries that, you know, other drivers were taking for the same night. So let's say I was working on a Saturday night, I might have, you know, 20, 25 deliveries that I took. The next driver might have, you know, 12 or 14, just because I knew the area, I knew how to maneuver and all that, and I was making bank. So, I mean, pizza delivery is no joke. It could be pretty good. And so I was talking to a friend of mine who owns a pizzeria, and he was talking about how so many drivers and just workers aren't there anymore. Every time I go there, there's a help wanted sign. I'm like, hey, look, if you need a hand or something, I know the business very well. You know, it's the same pizzeria. It's just that he opened that particular location, and so I told him, I'm like, hey, if you need a hand, let me know. But he was also saying how everybody's going to Doordash and working Doordash instead, because it's like, why work at one place when you could just go on and off whenever you want and all that? And it's like, yeah, it makes sense. But on the flip side, it's like, I could make more working a shift at that pizzeria than, you know, going out, because they're hiring at $17 an hour. You're making $17 an hour, plus you're going out and getting tips. Even if you don't have any deliveries, you're still making $17 an hour.
Can't beat that.
I mean, it's like I'm bewildered at that. Plus your tips. I mean, if you're I don't know what that particular location was doing, but I mean, you know, I would make on a Saturday night $150, $200 easily in cash. I mean, I'd work 40 hours, I'd make $600, $700 easily in cash. When it came to an entire week. And that was before pay, like the pay itself. So, I mean, like right there, it was well worth it. I mean, I don't know.
No, I mean, it says here, right? It says Domino's is betting on partnership with Uber Eats to turn around its pizza delivery business. The chain just needs one thing to make it happen. Delivery drivers. There you go. So the pizza restaurant announced its agreement with Uber Eats earlier this month. Selling pizzas through Uber represents $1 billion opportunity for the company. So there's going to be selling a ton more pizzas. But Domino's has struggled to recruit delivery drivers for years, CEO said. That means it will need to step up hiring and keep drivers to make good on its Uber Eats orders. The chain has made changes into training, as well as added company cars. You may not even need your car if you go to a location that offers you the car. Added company cars at some Domino's location, including electric vehicles, as we know, Chevy Bolts, so that workers who don't have cars can still make deliveries. And, you know, I mean, I think it's worth a shot. I think if you guys are tired of gamification, man, you just go there, pick up the pizza, deliver, come back, and do it again. And it may be, change your pace or whatever. But I think it's something.
Not only that, you know what? If I was working back at the pizzeria, I would have loved to probably have like RideShare going. I mean, this is well before I stopped driving in 2012, or I mean 2013, and that was before Uber and Lyft even came around to the area. But if RideShare was a thing back then, I probably would have done it. And then, when that shuts down, when I would have closed up, I would have just turned on the app and started driving. So I would have made even more money at that point. So I mean, hey, it's a real possibility. I mean, if you're interested in it, it's definitely something. I mean, the way some rates are going in some places when it comes to wages and stuff like that, it can be a real thing. I don't know how Domino's pays though when it comes down to it.
I'm gonna go figure it out. There's so many Domino's. There's so many Domino's around me. I'm gonna go talk to a manager. I deliver for Uber Eats. What you got going here, and then let me see what it is. No big deal. I'm not ashamed. I'm gonna go do it for a month or two. Whatever.
This is right there. That's a perfect opportunity. You're a rideshare driver or food delivery driver. You're already behind the wheel. You got the car. You may not even need the car, but you got the car right there. So when it goes back to, should you put on your resume? Yes, you should. All right. You got anything more there, Serge?
No, actually, a plug for Know Your Worth, please. Link in the show notes. Use Sergio for 15% off. The company link is in the show notes. We're going to donate $1 myself and the company to violent gig workers or victims of violence during gig work. And we will make it transparent, put it out there. Product is made in the U.S., handmade, very high quality and cheap. Literally, it's like $20 a shirt.
Serge, where's mine? I'm still waiting on my shirt.
I'm gonna get you. We have a new model dropping off. I don't know if you like that, but if you like simple things, that one it says, stay calm, cherry pick with a cherry on the bottom.
Keep calm and cherry pick.
Yeah, keep calm and cherry pick. Yeah.
I have my keep calm and chive on shirt.
So
if anybody knows the chive,
we'll send you a Know Your Worth one, or
there you go,
or Gigpreneur one. We'll see.
Well, maybe one day I'll have it on so I can sport it too. So we'll see.
Maybe, why not? Yeah.
All right. Yep. Well, you guys have a great rest of your day. Remember, Money Hungry is tomorrow with the kids, Kim and Zach. Inside joke if you don't know, but we call them the kids because we've been doing this for a little bit longer than them with Show Me the Money Club. But make sure you check it out. So food delivery, hey, who knows? Maybe they'll be talking about some pizza too. But food delivery, last mile. Also, anything else that you guys want to talk about, especially when it comes to the futuring of the gig work and what you should be doing as a gigpreneur. One of the things is we want to know. So email Sergio at therideshareguy.com so we can get a nice list of topics together, and then we can continue on with our series. We do have quite a few that we've already worked on, but we want to know your input. What do you guys want to know? What are your questions when it comes down to it? And other than that, make sure you're subscribed. If you're not, I don't know why you're not already.
Thumbs up.
And check out all of our great other content. Oh, yeah. And smash that like button.
Smash that like button. And
and then I just want to say special thanks to Peter, Walt, and Josh for coming on today and talking about kind of their playbook. And anybody else who's more interested in trying to get a grassroots movement going, hit up Sergio as well so he can help you out, get you in contact with them, and then hopefully maybe you can have a better opportunity in your area. I know I'm going to have to talk to them so I can talk to them about Buffalo and maybe going to the state of New York. Well, New York City is a whole different beast. So anybody watching in New York City, sorry, but upstate New York, maybe we'll try to get something going so it can be a real benefit there.
I agree.
For everybody.
Yeah, I mean, you need to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere. Yes. Don't back down. Don't back down. There will be losses, but it's like, you got to keep fighting. You got to keep grinding, people.
Yep.
That's it.
All right. Have a great